Well, hey there everyone, welcome back to Observe. In today's video, we're going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication of Elaine Bredehoft, that is Amber Heard's lawyer, regarding the case that just wrapped up between Heard and Depp. Now, obviously there are going to be appeals and further steps to this, but in today's video, we're going to be looking at an interview done on CBS this morning that kind of reveals some of the processing behind Amber Heard's side of the trial. Regardless, let's go ahead and run the intro and then we'll dive right in. Today's video is brought to us by Raycon. Now, that might sound weird to you that an audio company centered exclusively on creating high-quality audio devices is sponsoring this video, but it is true on both counts. As a matter of fact, Raycon has been making ripples in the electronics industry by making quality sound without breaking the bank. The everyday earbuds, which are these here, are the ones that I use day to day exclusively. Oftentimes I'll find myself fidgeting with the case. It's a satin finish, it's very soft, and you can't judge me. It's just fun to fidget with while I'm studying or working or something along those lines. Fortunately, the fine quality of the case carries also over into the sound, like I have mentioned. They have 3 different equalized sound settings for a better listening experience. You can choose between the pure sound, which is equalized specifically for crystal clear audio, very good for vocals, so if you're listening to audiobooks or podcasts, that's the one to go with. Balanced sound is the other one, which is more or less just balanced for any kind of musical genre. It's all the way around designed so that you can get the most sound out of your earbuds while listening to music. And then the last one is called bass sound. With this EQ preset, the rich low ends are boosted to provide that extra punch on songs that have a very strong beat. Along with that, the everyday earbuds have a 32-hour battery life, and the case is also able to charge wirelessly in case you want to go without any cables. Furthermore, they even have added IPX6 water resistance. This means that you're gonna be protected and safe from most splashes and maybe some brief submersion. Think something like running around outside in an intense downpour won't really bother them, but I don't suggest going scuba diving with them because that won't go so hot. So with that in mind, if you would like to be able to support the channel and get a discount on some earbuds that I use daily, go to buyraycon.com/observe or click the link in the description below and you will get 15% off your order. No matter what sort of audio content you listen to, Raycons are an excellent option for your listening ventures. Again, go to buyraycon.com/observe or click the link in the description and you will get 15% off your order. Big thanks again to Raycon for sponsoring this video, and now back to our regularly scheduled program. Before starting the video, I will note that Elaine has done multiple interviews and they all have extremely similar answers to the questions given, which we would expect, but it also lets us know that it is very rehearsed, so that's just going to add muddiness to the situation. So I've went through and I've looked at their nonverbal communication throughout the trial and these interviews to be able to establish somewhat of a loose baseline. Now, today we will be going through and seeing what they feel. All right, let's go ahead and begin.
A Virginia jury's decision to side with Johnny Depp in his defamation lawsuit is drawing both condemnation and praise. The verdict came after 6 weeks of very dramatic testimony from both sides. She claimed that he abused her while he said she was the abuser. In his reaction, Depp wrote, "The goal of bringing the case was to reveal the truth, and that truth never perishes." Elaine Bredehoft is the attorney for Amber Heard and is with us now. And we should mention, we did also reach out to Johnny Depp's team, but they declined to be interviewed this morning. Elaine, thank you. We're so very glad you're here.
Interesting. So right there, we did reach out to Johnny Depp's team. They declined to be with us. Elaine does a little bit of a head nod and affirmation, and then a little bit of contempt and disgust seeps into her expression there on the side of her face, letting us know that she feels morally aloof and also a little bit disgusted by the fact that Depp's team did not choose to show up that day. So that's just letting us know the attitude that we're going into this. Already we're establishing this moral aloofness and high ground. We expect that somewhat in any sort of interview like this, but it is seeping out on their subconscious levels already. So let's go ahead and begin.
Glad you're here.
Thank you.
We heard Amber's reaction to the verdict yesterday. This seems to be a huge victory for Johnny Depp this morning.
Yeah, a major setback for women inside the courtroom and outside the courtroom.
Because?
Because basically what this said, Amber had an enormous amount of evidence, although a lot of it was suppressed in this case as opposed to the UK. But look at all the women who have no evidence, all these women who suffer from domestic violence.
I want to go ahead and point out something here that's unfortunate. So this case is difficult, obviously, to say the least. And so in this instance, it's very difficult for me that right off the bat, what Elaine does is instead of saying this is Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, this is Johnny Depp's team versus Amber Heard's team, this is lawyer versus lawyer, they immediately paint it out to be this is Johnny Depp against the entirety of women. And while that is partially true, it is a subtle move there as well to make it to where no longer are people for Johnny Depp or for Amber Heard. It's now you're either for Johnny Depp or you're for women. And that's not what the case was about. So that's a little bit unfortunate there, but it is still true. This all in all made this extremely difficult and probably brought a lot of attention to these sorts of cases because of what they're about to bring up here as far as evidence goes. So let's watch.
Violence, domestic abuse, they don't have evidence. And basically what this jury said is unless you pull out your cell phone and you tape record your spouse beating you, you're out of luck.
But Elaine, I think it was bigger than that because you had the evidence, as you say, but they didn't.
Okay, so with that is true. The evidence is difficult. You need to have that evidence. Otherwise, it's a he said, she said, or a they said situation. And with that being the case, things like this channel are helpful, but since there are still many avenues that need to be explored along with the nonverbal to be able to get a solid verdict on anything, then it's still limiting. And so in this, it's true, it's hard to make a verdict without having the evidence, but it's hard to collect that sort of evidence. Now, what is interesting non-verbally speaking is while Elaine is doing that, if you watch the feet of the people around the table, they all start to fidget and shift a bit when they're bringing that part up. And that is an indicator of agitation. Anytime that you see that sudden burst in movement, they're processing psychologically, something's happening there. And obviously the interviewer kind of cuts in a little bit and asks or challenges with this other opinion side of things. So we're seeing this come out here. It does not seem as though the people in that room are in support of the Heard side of the trial, but let's continue watching.
They did not believe her. Why do you think they did not believe her?
I think that a lot of that was that it was Johnny Depp. I think the celebrity status.
But she's a celebrity too.
And it's not only not believing her.
But she's a celebrity too.
Right.
But you have to remember, it's a tale of two trials. All the evidence came in the UK. Mr. Depp brought that one. The burden.
Okay, so they asked, but they didn't believe her. Why is she not believable? And Elaine says it's Johnny Depp's fault that Amber Heard's not believable, which understandable. Johnny Depp is a larger name in the business, but Amber Heard still does have that following as well. So that's not actually a valid reason as to why people didn't believe Amber Heard. The reason that people didn't believe Amber Heard was because of the desynchronization, because of the fallacies in her storylines, because of the incongruencies as well. So those are the things that really pushed people to not believe Amber Heard. It wasn't Johnny Depp. So there really is a lot of nuance to this case. But let's continue watching.
When the burden of proof was on the son in the UK because they had called him a wife beater and talked about the domestic violence, he had his opportunity to tell the truth then. And a 3-week trial, he lost. The judge found 12 acts of domestic violence, including sexual violence. And that came out November 2, 2020. We weren't allowed to tell the jury that.
Well, it's a different system, and the judge, it wasn't a jury, it was a judge. The judge said it was substantially true, and that is significant, and I think surprised a lot of legal analysts. But, in this case, the jury not only didn't believe Amber Heard, but in ruling that she acted with actual malice, that means she had the intent to cause.
Okay, so we're seeing still some of the disgust towards Johnny Depp through the over-amplified version of the quotations there with the truth and things like that from Elaine. So we're seeing that she does have disgust and contempt in regards to that side side does make sense. In general, the points that he's bringing up here are solid with the differences between the two systems and that verbiage of substantially true. It wasn't fully true. That verbiage was also quite important. There are some details that go into that. And we're still just noticing that while Elaine's nonverbal communication has stayed largely composed, which we would hopefully expect from somebody who speaks in front of people so often, we're still seeing some of these patternings from both the way that they're directing attention and some of the small micros that are slipping out here and there, helping us understand a little bit better. So let's continue.
To cause harm, right? That's a pretty high standard to have proven.
And it's pretty amazing since the op-ed never even mentioned Mr. Depp. You have to remember that. What they learned from the UK case is to demonize Amber, which is what they did.
So this is interesting. The op-ed did not, in fact, mention Johnny Depp by name. Very true. It just heavily insinuated that it was him, to where you would have to go through a lot of mental gymnastics to assume that it wasn't him. So that argument alone is just like, all right, Elaine, come on, let's be real. Don't be like, oh, well, we didn't actually even say the name Johnny Depp. You true, very true, but still. So with that alone, that I found these interviews frustrating from Elaine because it did not sound like anybody taking accountability for things that they did poorly or responsibility really in any level. It's just all everybody else's fault and their side was perfect. And that's just simply not the case. Obviously, it's not the case. So let's continue.
And to try to suppress as much of the evidence that came in the UK and did not come in the United States. But the other problem is we had cameras in the courtroom. So here we had, not only did we have a group of Depp fans that were there every day, 100 were allowed in. They lined up at 1 o'clock in the morning for their wristbands to be in that courtroom. But we had everything on camera, and we had tremendous social media that was very, very, very much against Amber.
It was pointed out that that was the first time that a victim of sexual abuse had to testify on live television.
And I fought hard and lost that battle. It should not have happened.
So I am a former.
So with this is true. This was an odd case all the way around, that it was so publicly done. Not sure why they insisted on having it so publicly done, but it definitely was. And once again, it did add a lot of complications in there. But as you can hear, Elaine is again blaming everything on Johnny's side of things. Oh, well, now it's the fans' fault. She didn't really explain how it's the fans' fault, but they were there, and that obviously made it worse. Regardless, to be able to be compassionate in this situation, that does also make it more difficult, just because if you're testifying about something that is difficult, genuinely, and there is a whole horde of people that don't appreciate you or don't think that you're telling the truth, it is going to be more difficult to be genuine and authentic because you feel attacked already. So there is that possibility that that was going in there. Now, this was across multiple different testimonies and multiple different instances throughout time that we've seen these difficulties from Amber Heard come up. So I don't really buy into Elaine's thing of, oh, well, there were a bunch of fans at the trial and that made it look fake. Because then what about the earlier deposition that we analyzed the first video on, where there were no fans and it was still fake and full of incongruencies? But let's go.
Former NFL player. And after a hard loss, it's easy to wake up and point to the other side. Oftentimes, I realized the better thing to do was to look in the mirror. What mistakes did I make as a player? What mistakes did our coaching staff make? And then how can we improve from there? Do you feel like you guys made any mistakes along the way? Do you feel like Amber made a mistake while she was on the stand? Because you're saying it's the celebrity, it's Johnny, it's the people who support him. But what about you and your team?
Well, and that's an excellent question. And to say, and you know, Amber even said on the stand,
there it is. Okay, so with this, now Elaine's being challenged, so she backs up, tucks her chin, pitch goes up, strain enters into her voice, and now she starts stuttering and stammering. This is what happens when you contest what was being said and they start falling apart. So with that in mind, that is still another indicator that they are simply attempting to come out and show that they were 1000% pure, and they're about to admit that they weren't. So now we know they weren't doing perfect, but they are still trying to present as if they were doing perfect, which is manipulation 101. So, still not a fan of what they're doing here, but fascinating to see non-verbally. Let's go.
I am not perfect. I am a human being. These people were giving her death threats. They threatened to microwave her baby. This is the kind of social media she was getting. So are any of us perfect? No. Is there something else we feel we should have done? Yes, absolutely. I redo my closing.
She's really having difficulty here. There's a lot of no shaking, which we've seen a consistent level of no shaking, head shaking, left and right throughout this entire interview. And this is actually pretty common in the other ones as well. So since it's so prevalent, then we have to assume that there could be a level of conscious control of that. Now, with that, there is a few psychological processings behind the Americanized version of the no shake, or this specific cultural version of the left and right head shake. So with this, it could be a no, a negative, not believing in that. Those are usually more micro. If it's a negative with a positive and you see teeny tiny micro head shake no, that might be an indicator of desynchronization. In this area, what it's likely related to is the unbelievable nature of things, or you wouldn't believe it, you would not believe what has been going on, those sorts of things, skepticism, that will all come into that. If there is a statement being said that sounds like it might be questionable, you will oftentimes see that come out. And that could be maybe insecurity, but at very least it is indicating that there is an unbelievable or difficult to believe nature to what's being said. Now, that doesn't mean it's not true, it's just difficult to believe. So we saw that coming all throughout there. Now we have to ask, why is her no shake in there? Since it's so broad, probably not subconscious. So what's the reason for it? Combined with the rest of the nonverbal communication that they're displaying, it does kind of seem more so to be the unbelievable nature of what they're saying and how hard it would be to believe, especially since even they themselves have painted themselves to be perfect, and now they're backtracking and stumbling all over themselves, saying that they obviously aren't, and everybody's human, and the classic excuses from somebody who has just been called out. So we're seeing these pop up, and it's true, everybody's human and everybody makes mistakes, but then why, Elaine, did you insist that everything was Johnny's fault to begin with? That's manipulation and lying. So if it was also your fault, don't try to make it everybody else's fault. Let's continue.
Closings 100 times afterwards, whether I win or lose. That's part of being a good lawyer, a good trial lawyer, is there's always something. But I think that there were a lot of influences here that were beyond our control. And I think the social media, it was like a Roman Colosseum. Is the best way to describe the atmosphere here. And I have to believe that the jury, even though they're told not to go and look at anything, they have weekends, they have families, they have social media.
They were not sequestered. They were not sequestered.
And the 10-day period we had, how could they not have been influenced?
But Elaine, for most people watching this trial, and a lot of people, as you know, got huge views, it just seemed to be so messy and salacious and so tawdry on both sides. And I think for a lot of people from the outside looking in thought both of them were not telling the truth, and that they mutually abused each other. Do you not believe that that was the case?
No, and that's one of the many misnomers. The way that Depp's...
I can't handle this one. I can't wrap my head around, in that there is an audio recording of Amber Heard admitting verbally that she struck Johnny Depp. Very hard to ignore that. There is evidence, physical evidence, medical evidence that says otherwise, and so Elaine just really seems to be blowing smoke at this point. Where no, not at all. Amber Heard was pretty much perfect in this, and it's so obviously not true. I don't know how they could so comfortably and quickly say that. Which also on that found that interesting. That response before the question was almost even out of the interviewer's mouth was no, well before any consideration had been given. That was an automatic, unthought through response. It's frustrating for me to see, especially in a trial like this, where it's very important that everything has to be weighed very, very heavily and considered. That should not have happened that quickly. It's difficult to see. So let's continue.
Depp's team approached this was based on ignorance of domestic violence. It completely ignored the cycle of violence and just said, oh, she wouldn't have done this if he had been hitting her. That was their approach.
So you thought that they weren't fighting fair?
Correct. I don't think they were fighting fair.
And you think
Absolutely.
Amber Heard is, in fact, a survivor of domestic violence?
Yes, I absolutely believe that. And there's a tremendous amount of evidence, much of which did not come into this trial, did come into the UK trial. We even had more evidence. We had medical records. We had mental health records that went back to 2012 that were contemporaneous. We had text messages from Mr. Depp's assistant saying, when I told him that he had kicked you, he cried.
So how
That
is she
didn't come
today,
in.
Elaine? How is she today? What is her
heartbroken.
next move?
So I find that interesting. She's obviously getting agitated. Elaine is, as you can hear her pitch and volume increase in her tone, and then her expressions and gestures are starting to broaden as well. But what I find interesting about the statement that she's giving is that she just said a second ago that Amber was fine, despite me bringing up the points that there were medical records, all of these things showing that it wasn't the case. And now that's the same argument that they're using towards Johnny now. And so why is it not matter if it's Amber's, but it matters if it's Johnny's? And so that's where my frustration is, because frankly, I find it pretty hard to believe that the relationship was all bad from one side. So to try to assume that Amber Heard had done all of the abuse in that relationship is not necessarily true, especially considering what we have seen come out in evidence form from Johnny's behaviors. That being said, it is still a he said, she said, they said situation. And what we're seeing from this side of things is that as far as they're concerned, they want no blame, no scrutiny, no fault at all, regardless of evidence. But they insist that Johnny does. It's just a fascinating ploy. Let's continue.
Right. Well, her next move is appeal. There were
But
a
she's
number.
heartbroken.
She is heartbroken. And one of the first things that she said when she came back from the verdict, when we went into the conference room, was, I am so sorry to all these women.
She said that?
Yes. She felt like she had let down all of these women because she had more evidence than most people do. And yet they still didn't believe her.
Elaine Bredehoft, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you.
Thank
We'll be right back.
I don't believe that I'll be doing more on this trial. Maybe if the appeals go through and things continue on from there, there might be. During these interviews, all that we know is that Elaine Bredehoft tried very hard to avoid any form of responsibility, regardless of admitting their own faults, still trying to maintain a perfect view of themselves in everybody's eyes, and that simply wasn't the case. Obviously, like I said. So if I have missed something, especially with the UK case, there are some interesting details around that, like the judge omitted part of Johnny's testimony because he was under the influence of various substances at the time. Along with that, there was a portion of the UK case that was saying that Amber Heard had donated $3.5 million of her own money. And in this case, it kind of came out that she had lied about that and she had not done that at all, which that was a big determining factor. If somebody's willing to back up what they're saying with all of this money and follow through on that, that's a pretty big indicator of authenticity. But it turns out that when you are willing to donate other people's money, it doesn't mean anything. So there were some areas that were really interesting with that. So if you know more details about that, please feel free to fill us in the comments below. If you have any other thoughts about this, let me know in the comments below. And if you have any other requests for any other videos, be it true crime, be it drama, be it reality TV, just whatever you feel like, let me know in the comments below, and hopefully I'll be able to get going on that. Check out all the different socials. I will be getting more active on there. You will either be hearing from me or a member of my team. And hopefully we'll be able to keep things rolling. I have the P.O. box opened and listed in the description of the videos, so you can go if you're wanting to send stuff this way. Then yeah, that's your way to do it. Oh, let's see here. I think that's about all that we've got for the day. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome as you always are, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.